There are people in your life right now who feel everything deeply but show nothing on the surface, and one of them might be closer to you than you think. They don't cry in front of you. They don't say, "I need you." They don't reach out first, but something is happening inside them that they will never admit out loud. And today we are going to talk about what it looks like when you have actually gotten through to one of them. Not when they like you, not when they tolerate you, but when you have genuinely touched something inside an avoidant that most people never even get close to. Because here is the truth that nobody is telling you. Most people who fall for an avoidant spend months, sometimes years, trying to figure out if they even matter to that person. And they use all the wrong signals to measure it. They look for grand gestures. They wait for "I love you" first. They expect consistency that mirrors their own. And when they don't get those things, they assume they've failed. But what if you haven't failed? What if you've actually done something extraordinary, something that most people never accomplish, and you just don't recognize it? Because an avoidance version of being moved looks nothing like everyone else's. That is exactly what we are unpacking today. 4 signs, real ones, not the surface level stuff you've already read 100 times. The deep psychological signals that an avoidant soul has been genuinely touched by you. And I want you to stay with me through all 4 of them, because the 4th one is the one that almost nobody sees coming, and it might completely change how you understand the person you are dealing with right now. Before we go further, if you are someone who has ever loved someone, who runs when things get too close, who shuts down when you need them most, who seems to disappear the moment you start to feel something real, this video is for you. Drop the word soul in the comments right now if you are ready to understand them on a level most people never will. And make sure you subscribe, because we go deep here, every single time. Now let's get into it. Let's start by understanding something fundamental about avoidance, because if you don't understand what's happening inside them, you will misread every single sign they give you. An avoidant person did not choose to be the way they are. Nobody sits down one day and decides, "You know what, I am going to build enormous walls around my heart and make sure nobody ever really gets in." That is not a decision. That is a survival strategy. Something happened, usually early in life, where emotional closeness became associated with pain, disappointment, or loss. Maybe they needed someone who wasn't there. Maybe they expressed vulnerability and got punished for it in some way, through rejection, ridicule, or simply being ignored. Maybe they learned that needing people meant getting hurt by people. And so the brain, in its remarkable and sometimes frustrating wisdom, built a system, a defense system. And that system looks like independence. It looks like not needing anyone. It looks like being perfectly fine on their own. It looks like pulling away when things get too real, too close, too emotionally charged. Now here's what makes this incredibly complicated. The avoidant person still has needs. They still feel things. They still, despite everything their nervous system has been trained to do, want connection. They want love. They want to feel close to someone. They just have this massive internal conflict where the moment they start to feel that closeness, the alarm goes off. The alarm that says danger. The alarm that says this is where you get hurt. And so they retreat. They create distance. They go cold. They find reasons to pull back. And the person on the other side of that, which might be you right now, is left feeling confused, rejected, and wondering what they did wrong. Here is the thing that changes everything. When an avoidant has been genuinely touched by someone, when another person has gotten past that first layer and the second layer, and even the third layer of their defenses, they cannot hide it completely. They try, they absolutely try, but there are signs. And those signs don't look like what you would expect from a securely attached person. They are quieter, they are more subtle. They sometimes look like the opposite of what they actually mean, which is exactly why we need to talk about them. Sign number 1, they come back without a reason. This one is so easy to miss because it can look like nothing. You're talking to an avoidant, things are going well. Maybe they even started opening up a little, and then they pull back, they go quiet, they create distance. And you are sitting there wondering if you did something wrong, wondering if you pushed too hard, wondering if this is just over. And then days later, or maybe a week later, they just reappear. They send you a message. Maybe it's something casual. Maybe it's literally just a meme or an article or a Hey, I was thinking about this thing we talked about. And you might look at that and think, okay, that's not that significant, but I need you to look at it differently. For an avoidant, reaching back out after they have retreated is enormous because the retreat is their comfort zone. The distance is where they feel safe. Being alone, not needing anyone, not being in contact, that is the familiar territory for them. Coming back out of that territory and initiating contact with you means they couldn't stay away. And that is not a small thing. That is their system being overridden by something stronger. Think about what has to happen for that to occur. Their nervous system is telling them, stay away, stay safe, you don't need this. And yet something pulls them back to you. Something about you specifically breaks through that signal. They don't come back to everyone. They don't reach back out to just anyone who they've had a good conversation with. If they are coming back to you without a concrete external reason, without needing something specific, without there being some practical necessity for it, that is them being drawn to you against the instincts that usually run their life. Now, the important thing here is to notice the pattern over time. One return means maybe not much on its own, but a consistent pattern of retreat and return, of going quiet and then coming back, of creating distance and then choosing to close it again, that tells you something real. That tells you that whatever is happening inside them when they think about you is strong enough to keep bringing them back, even when everything in them is telling them to stay away. The way you should respond to this, by the way, is not with a flood of emotion, not with, "Oh my God, I missed you so much, where did you go?" That will trigger the retreat again immediately. The way you respond is with warmth and normalcy, like their return is welcome but not desperate. Like you are genuinely happy to hear from them, but you are also completely fine without them. That combination, warmth plus self-sufficiency, is the exact thing that makes an avoidant feel safe enough to keep coming back. Because they are testing, even if they don't consciously know they are testing, whether you are going to grab hold of them and not let go. And when you show them that you can hold space for them without gripping them, they come back more, and they stay longer each time. Sign number 2. They tell you something they have never told anyone else. Now, I need you to understand how significant this is, because if you've had a conversation with an avoidant where they said something like, "I don't usually talk about this," or "I've never told anyone that before," or even just quietly shared something that felt deeply personal, something shifted, something real happened. Avoidants are extraordinarily private people, not because they don't have inner worlds, actually quite the opposite. They often have incredibly rich, complex emotional inner lives, but they have learned, usually through experience, that sharing those inner worlds is risky. It opens them up to judgment. It creates dependency. It makes them vulnerable. And vulnerability is the thing that their entire personality structure is designed to protect them from. So when they share something with you that is real, something that matters, something from the parts of themselves they usually keep locked away, they have made a decision. Maybe not consciously, maybe it just slipped out in a moment of connection. But their psyche chose to trust you with something it doesn't trust most people with. And that is not nothing. That is everything. The mistake people make here is to immediately rush in with relatability. "Oh, I know exactly how you feel. The same thing happened to me. Let me tell you about my experience." And suddenly the conversation is about you. And the avoidant quietly registers that their moment of vulnerability got redirected, and they file that away. And next time they feel that urge to share something real, they remember what happened last time. The way to respond when an avoidant shares something vulnerable is to receive it fully. Stay in the moment. Ask a follow-up question. Show genuine curiosity. Make them feel that what they shared was interesting to you, not as a launching pad for your own story, but as something you want to understand more deeply. When you respond that way, when you create a space where their vulnerability is met with genuine interest and zero judgment, something happens in their nervous system. The alarm that usually goes off, the one that says vulnerability equals danger, gets a different message. It gets a message that says, this person is safe. This person handles my inner world with care, and that rewires something. Not permanently, not overnight, but it creates a new association. Being open with you equals safety. And for an avoidant, finding someone who represents emotional safety is extraordinarily rare. They have lived their whole lives with the belief, often unconscious, that true emotional safety doesn't really exist with other people. When you become someone who challenges that belief, when you become the evidence against everything they thought they knew about being vulnerable, you have touched something in them that goes very, very deep. Sign number 3. They become visibly uncomfortable with the idea of losing you. This one is fascinating because it tends to show up in ways that look like the opposite of what it is. Here's what I mean. An avoidant whose soul you have touched will not, in most cases, look you in the eye and say, "I'm scared of losing you." They will not come to you with open hands and say, "Please don't go." That is not how they are built. What they will do instead is more indirect. They might suddenly bring up concerns about the relationship out of nowhere, when things seem to be going relatively well. They might get cold or distant right after a particularly close, connected moment. They might pick a fight about something small and seemingly irrelevant. They might test you in ways that feel bewildering, saying things that seem designed to push you away while actually watching very carefully to see if you will stay. They might make comments that gauge your interest without directly asking about it. "I don't want to be a burden to you," or "I know you probably have other people you talk to," or "You don't have to keep up with me." These aren't just throwaway comments. These are an avoidance way of asking, "Do you still want me?" without the terrifying vulnerability of actually asking the question. Because the question itself, "Do you still want me?" requires them to admit that they want to know. And admitting they want to know means admitting they care about the answer. And caring about the answer means they are not as detached as they have been telling themselves they are. Now, this is where so many people go wrong. When an avoidant starts doing these things, when they get weird or prickly or distant right after a moment of real connection, the natural human response is to match that energy, to pull back, to get confused and hurt and start creating your own distance. And what happens then is that the very thing they were afraid of, you going away, starts to look like it might actually be happening. And that can send them into a spiral. What you want to do instead is stay regulated. Stay warm but not desperate. Don't chase them when they create distance. That only confirms their belief that closeness leads to loss of self. But also, don't punish them for being avoidant by withdrawing your warmth entirely. There is a specific kind of steadiness that you can offer an avoidant person. A steadiness that says, "I'm not going anywhere and I'm also not going to suffocate you." And that steadiness, when you can genuinely embody it and not just perform it, is one of the most powerful things you can offer them. When they see that you don't spiral, when they see that you don't make every fluctuation in their behavior into a catastrophe, when they see that you can hold your own emotional ground without either clinging or withdrawing, something in them relaxes. And in that relaxation, in those moments where their guard comes down, because you've made it feel safe enough to lower it, that is when you see the real person underneath the armor. And that person is often warmer, more loving, more desperate for genuine connection than you ever imagined. Sign number 4. This is the one I told you about at the beginning, the one that almost nobody sees coming. And it might be the most important one of all. They start to change their behavior without being asked. Not dramatically, not overnight, but gradually, almost imperceptibly. You start to notice that things are different. They check in on you in small ways they never did before. They remember something you mentioned weeks ago and bring it up now. They make an effort to be present in a conversation instead of half checked out the way they usually are. They create plans or suggest them, which is something avoidants almost never do because planning implies commitment, and commitment implies vulnerability. They start to show up in ways that are not required of them, not because they have to, not because you pushed them to, but because something inside them has decided that you are worth the effort that closeness requires. This is the deepest sign of all. Because avoidants, when they are in their default pattern, operate from a place of emotional economy. They invest the minimum necessary to maintain connection, if they invest at all. Not because they are selfish people, but because deep down they have a belief that investing in connection leads to loss, that the more they give, the more they have to lose. That love, real love, is a terrifying gamble where the house always wins. So when you see an avoidant voluntarily extending themselves beyond what is required, when you see them choosing to be more present, more thoughtful, more consistent, that is not a small thing. That is a revolution happening inside them. That is their entire belief system about love and connection being challenged by the experience of being with you. And they are doing the terrifying thing of betting on it anyway. Now, I want to talk about something that most conversations about avoidance leave out entirely. And it's this: you cannot force any of these signs to appear. You cannot manufacture them through strategy or manipulation or playing hard to get or any of the games that a lot of advice out there will tell you to play. The reason is simple. An avoidance nervous system is extraordinarily sensitive to inauthenticity. They have spent their lives protecting themselves from being manipulated or let down or pulled into a closeness that then becomes a trap. And they are very, very good at detecting when something is performance versus when something is real. If you are trying to trigger these signs by being strategically unavailable or sending calculated messages or running some kind of emotional program on them, they will feel it and they will retreat. And you will have lost the thing that was actually working, which was you, the real you, showing up as a person with your own life and your own warmth and your own emotional groundedness. The people who genuinely touch an avoidant soul are not the ones who played the best game. They are the ones who were the most real, the ones who didn't shrink themselves to fit the avoidance comfort level, but who also didn't make the avoidance discomfort into their personal problem to solve. They are the ones who were just themselves, fully, unapologetically themselves, with warmth and confidence and an inner life that existed regardless of whether the avoidant reciprocated. That is magnetic to an avoidant person in a way that nothing else is. Because most people who pursue an avoidant either chase too hard and confirm that intimacy is suffocating, or they play so cool that they give the avoidant no reason to move toward them at all. But a person who is fully themselves, who has standards and lightness and depth all at once, who is warm but not needy, interested but not obsessed, present but not consuming, that person presents the avoidant with something their nervous system has never quite encountered before. And that newness, that safe strangeness of someone who wants to be close but won't die without it, is where the magic happens. Now let's talk about something else that is really important here. What does it mean for you if you recognize these signs? What do you actually do with this information? Because understanding that an avoidant has been touched by you is powerful knowledge. But power without direction is just pressure. So here is what I want you to think about. First, know that you cannot do this work for them. You can be the safest person they have ever encountered. You can be the most emotionally regulated, the most genuine, the most consistently warm and self-assured person they have known. And they can still be too caught in their patterns to choose the vulnerability that connection requires. That is not a reflection of your worth. That is a reflection of their own internal work that hasn't happened yet. You cannot be someone else's healing. You can be a catalyst for it. You can be a beautiful invitation, but you cannot walk through the door for them. That part they have to do themselves. Second, know that your own emotional health matters enormously in this dynamic. The worst thing you can do for yourself, and honestly for the avoidant too, is to lose yourself in the pursuit of their breakthrough. Because the moment you start orbiting someone else's emotional patterns at the expense of your own life, your own joy, your own relationships, your own sense of self, you become someone who is operating from anxiety and not from strength. And operating from anxiety around an avoidant does not produce connection. It produces more distance, which paradoxically makes you chase harder, which produces more distance. And suddenly you are in a cycle that is consuming you and probably confusing them too. Stay in your own life, your passions, your friendships, your goals, your growth. Patience is not the same as waiting. Patience is giving a relationship room to grow while continuing to live your own life. Waiting is putting your life on hold, hoping someone will eventually choose you. Patience says, I am here, I am growing, and I will let this unfold naturally. Waiting says, my life cannot move forward until this person decides. One is love, the other is self-abandonment. Understanding avoidant psychology should never become a reason to neglect your own needs. When an avoidant feels a genuine connection, two forces come alive at once. One says, I feel safe with this person. The other says, the closer I get, the more I have to lose. That fear is not a conscious decision. It is a nervous system response built through years of self-protection. So when an avoidant comes back after retreating, opens up emotionally, or begins changing without being asked, they are moving against old conditioning. That is meaningful. But meaningful is not the same as enough. You deserve someone who chooses you consistently. If they still cannot meet your needs despite genuine feelings, the healthiest response is honest communication. You can simply say, I care about you, but I also need certain things from a relationship. If we cannot give those to each other, I have to honor myself. That is not giving up. It is respecting both of you. When you see these 4 signs together, returning without reason, sharing rare vulnerabilities, fearing your loss, and making voluntary changes, you are witnessing someone caught between love and fear. Your presence has made them question the walls they built around themselves. That matters, but never confuse their internal struggle with a promise of a healthy relationship. Keep asking yourself one question. Is this relationship as it exists today good for me? Understanding avoidant psychology should bring compassion, not keep you trapped. You are not here to save someone. You are here to build a relationship where 2 people are choosing each other.